The record that had the biggest impact on my life would have to be Angel Hair's first 7-inch from 1994. I put it on my turntable and thank you for blowing my mind. I'm Alex Rodriguez, record collector in Los Angeles, California. A lot of times people ask me how many records I want to get. The answer to that is as many as I can. Brought a lot of clothes, suitcases. This whole thing is socks and underwear. 1977 Star Wars 45 carrying case. Lots of hair product. That's about it. Once we get on the main freeway to get out of LA, I'll make a quick decision of whether we go 101 or 5. I have no idea. That's the whole beauty of my trips, is they kind of don't have a plan. I really don't know what we're about to jump into.
The first step, I learned, is to pour a thin layer of molten wax onto a hot plate, the beginning of the master record. The vibrations of sound brought from the microphones pass through this cutting head to the stylus.
RCA Victor's 45 RPM record is the finest and best ever made. One convenient size, all 7 inches.
At this factory in Birmingham, they're making the world's first truly portable record player. Operated by a battery, you just slip in a disc and the starter button operates an ingenious tracking device.
The new RCA Victor tape cartridge for easy magazine loading to make playing a tape as simple as or even easier than playing a record.
Radio Shack has a super half-price deal now on an 8-track car stereo tape player.
This is the album of the future, and it's fast becoming a hit. It's called a CD.
Audio equipment experts predict by 1990 the conventional turntable will be outdated.
Sony MD lets you digitally record your favorite music and take it with you wherever you go.
iPod is an MP3 music player, but the biggest thing about iPod is it holds 1,000 songs.
Convenience isn't everything. Sales are up more than 50% this year for vinyl records. Yes, the hottest way to listen to music in 1915 is also one of the hottest ways in 2015.
The first time I put a needle on a record, it was Rubber Soul by the Beatles, and my life has never been the same, nor have I had any storage space in my life.
Gary Newman, Telecar.
I brought home a record by Richard Hell and the Voidoids. My mom took one listen, she says, "That's not what you listen to."
Barry Gibb and Barbara Streisand's Guilty LP, which I still adore to this day.
I realized that I didn't have to just listen to the radio. I could start becoming a collector.
I've been into music pretty much all my life. When I was 14, I started off with a few punk records, and now I'm 24 years later, I've built a collection of 23,000 records. I ran out of space. I thought, hey, I could put my bed on top of records. A big part of why I collect is because I became straight edge when I was 15. You don't drink or do drugs or smoke cigarettes, and I'm still straight edge to this day. So since I wasn't in that drug and alcohol world, records kind of became my drug. And then I started selling records at record shows. That's how I met my boss, Paul Tillett, who is the founder of Coachella Music Festival. He was buying records from me, and he had the Glass House record store, and he asked me to help him. My job was to turn it around, throw way more records in the store, get it more organized. And Paul needed a record store for Coachella one year, you came to me, basically I had a couple months to put together a 30,000 piece record store. I took it on as a challenge, and it eventually became a full-time job for me. And here I am 5 Coachellas later. When I say 30,000 records, we're talking 30,000 used records. This isn't brand new vinyl I could just get from a distributor or a label. To make the Coachella record store something special, it really takes like a lot of sifting through thousands of records, looking for the best condition records I can find. I'm looking for amazing titles that maybe you need to go to North Dakota or, you know, New York for, because maybe it was a band that was local to that area, or they so happened to have success in that area. So the point of these trips is to really just find the best records I can find. One thing that I have to do is I need to see the ocean before I leave it. There's just something about the West Coast ocean that kind of feeds my soul. The smell, the sound, there's life going on in there that I don't understand, and I guess that's what attracts me to it. This is kind of my serenity, my peaceful times before I embark on what the real purpose of this journey is. There's like something calming about it. This is like the last kind of few hours I have before I really start getting into my job, and that's finding records. All right, I've been cleansed. I don't know if you can see any sun out there, but I don't see any. It's covered up by the clouds. But that's the great thing about listening to tunes on the road, is sometimes they fit the mood. Like this song just came on shuffle, Velvet Underground, Who Loves the Sun. And yeah, he's having a bad day, so he's like, he's being gloomy. So he's basically saying like, you know, he's not having a fun sunny day. And we're not having a sunny day either right now. So the song's very fitting. Although we are having fun, not sunny. It's always nice to dig around plants. It's kind of like I'm digging out in nature. And this store's called Little Axe, and there's their Little Axe right there. Sometimes it's a little more expensive than I want to sell it for, so, you know, I have to pass on it. Because I try to make things at Coachella very affordable, because I want people to be able to go home with a record. This is my favorite Brazilian singer, Astrid Gilberto. I actually thought if I ever had 2 daughters, one would be named Mazzy, after Mazzy Star, and the other one would be named Astrid, after her, Astrid Gilberto. So far, no kids.
Yeah, it is weird. The desperation.
Yeah, you know.
Oh.
Because like my thing is like...
We're being filmed having a nerd conversation.
Yeah.
No, we're good. Crossroads Records is a collective of over 30 record dealers, and we've been around since 1993. The idea is that we can get a lot of different kinds of things and well represented by having several different people curate several different sections. And so some people are really strong on punk music and bring in really rare titles in good, clean condition. But then we also have very common records and some beat-up records. It's kind of the greatest hits of all record stores. I'm gonna get that. Okay.
So something cool about this record is this particular one on Kick Out the Jams. It says Kick Out the Jams, Mother Effers, and then they changed it to Kick Out the Jams, Mothers and Fathers. So I actually kind of like the Mothers and Fathers. I think it sounds funny. It's like, kick out the jams, mothers and fathers. Like, and so, but this is kind of neat that it has the original liner notes, so it's first press. This is a band, Player. They have the song, Baby Come Back. You know, you've probably seen it in like Swiffer commercials, but I've never seen this record. I didn't even know, and it's cool. It has a cat on the back of the cover. I like records with cats. It takes me a while to get in the groove, and then after a couple days of just hitting record stores nonstop, like, I'm good. We got a celebrity here. Sissy Spacek. At Coachella, we actually have a section for celebrity records, so I'm always looking for any record that maybe a movie star did. Like, for instance, Scott Baio has a record. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the basketball player, has a record. Darryl Strawberry, the baseball player, has a rap record. So it's like things like that I'm always looking for.
Why do I collect records? Why does anyone do anything completely obsessive?
20,000 records later. My name is Ray, and I'm addicted to vinyl.
People collect records because it's fun, because it helps them feel closer to the music, because it helps them feel closer to the time period.
I collected records because it gave me an identity, really, especially as a kid.
Well, I'm old, so that's all there was.
The reason most people collect records is they want a flashback to their youth.
9 times out of 10, it's a connection to my childhood.
I think I collect vinyl mostly because my parents.
I got into collecting records from my dad. You know, basically, he was a collector back in Jamaica. You know, had kids and had his kids dabbling in his vinyl, and I was one of those kids that never stopped.
If you love Picasso, you might buy a postcard just to, you know, I love this painting. The LP is as close as it gets to the best possible print of an artist's work, and I think that's why people collect them.
It's a tangible piece. MP3 is, it goes like air.
Why do I collect records? You should ask my shrink.
Making money, lots and lots of money, and then to spend that money on hookers and drugs, if possible, and more records.
Excuse me, it seems that I have lost my breath. Yes, you knocked the wind out of my chest. Now I'm on the ground.
It's one of my favorite things to do, walking to a record store and just kind of look around and be like, cool, where am I gonna start? When I started DJing about 2010, I really amped up my buying because I had this platform to share my music with people. One of my favorite records, the King Kills album. Their politics just really spoke to me. This is split with a British band called Huggy Bear.
I must have been like 15 or 16 when I got this record. I rarely listened to the Bikini Kill side. I liked it, it was cool, but I was like really drawn to Huggy Bear. I used to come up from Southern California to the Big Dig where I met Valerie, and
you have the best records consistently.
And I had good records.
Like
so.
Stuff that we don't get around here.
Yeah, definitely.
I like sharing with people. I think for me that's the biggest thing. That's why I like to DJ, is just sharing records that I find with other people. That's really my main motivation for doing that. And I feel like record culture, that's kind of like at the heart of record culture, for me at least.
The first record that I was really into was Beat It by Michael Jackson.
The first record I remember playing was Cloud Kicker, Let Yourself Be Huge.
The first record I remember, that I really remember buying, was the first Weird Al Yankovic record.
The first record I remember really having, or that I still have a pretty crazy relationship with, would be like the Hobbit read-along storybook record.
Interesting thing about Creedence Clearwater, my mom dated the drummer back in the 60s. So my mom was pretty wild. She saw all kinds of bands in the 60s. She was hanging out with this guy.
There's not a lot of record stores in this region, in Montana or, you know, Idaho, into Washington. And so we're really kind of a hub for amassing all of the, you know, the records that have been sitting in basements and barns and attics in the area for a long time. Being in Missoula really allows us to have a lot of records that aren't necessarily just totally picked.
It's always funny when you're coming from Southern California and you come all the way to Montana and you find a Los Angeles record that you just never see in LA, because as soon as a record store gets it in LA, it's like flies off the shelves. But it's sitting here in Montana. When I'm in a store, it's more expensive than my prices. It's like, what's the point? For instance, this record right here, it's $12. I'm gonna sell it for $10, so I'm gonna take the $2 loss, because maybe I'll find a $3 record later down the line that I can sell for $5 and make up the $2 difference. So I'm gonna take it, even though it's $2 more than I would even sell it for. But this is just a good record to have. Donald Byrd, Places and Spaces. This guy's country music, Freddie Fender. My dad loved him, but he didn't really care for much other country, just Freddie Fender. So there's a stack I picked up here at Rockin' Rudy's in Missoula, Montana. Jazz record Air, German metal band called Bastard. It's actually pretty good. And this is like a German press. Krautrock band, The System. Never found this one before. Sometimes you gotta come to Montana to find a record. My trusty wallet, it's been with me for 20 years. And everybody always says, like, why do you keep it? And I don't know why I keep it. It's gross and it doesn't smell that great either. I wash it occasionally. Certain regions of the United States had genres that were popular and genres that were not so popular. As you can see, used reggae here in Missoula, Montana. You got 2 records. So you got a Jimmy Cliff record and a Third World record. Actually, this isn't even reggae, this is Gato Babari, Latin jazz. When I first walked in the store, I thought I was gonna be in and out pretty quick, and then the owner let me look at some stuff that had just come in and hadn't been priced yet, and I found a lot of really interesting things I don't know, and that was exciting.
I sold my 1959 Chrysler Windsor for a couple $1,000s and used that as my startup and like a bunch of records out of my personal collection that I sold. And yeah, so that's how we started. First couple years, I had to work a second job just to make sure the doors stayed open. But yeah, we're coming up on 20 years now.
I was a journalist for the better part of a dozen years. So a lot of these records represent that. When something's popular, I'm already onto something else or going back to something else. I was literally going to the hippest stores in New York and buying Ronnie James Dio records for $1. The reason I'm able to be a large record collector is because I will not pay a lot of money for a record. I will go anywhere to buy vinyl. Garage sales, thrift stores. I'm the guy on his knees in the back of the room, looking in that bin trying to find the records. And you'll notice there are no CDs on the wall. That's a statement. Here's the first 12-inch with Rick Rubin's first band that was a flipper-style noise band. Does that sound like Super Freak to you?
It's a slowed down cover of Super Freak.
Exactly.
James.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear it now.
Yeah. There's 2 different ways that art happens. Like Pop Stars is from the top down, but the other side is from the bottom up. Who's Gloria Jones? She wrote Tainted Love. She was married to Mark Bolan. She was on more T-Rex records than anybody. She sang on Sweet Home Alabama. Why doesn't anybody know who she is? It was this hardcore punk explosion in Washington, D.C., and the vinyl was independently made. Just this incredible idea that you could be a little band and have like a big record. Minor Threat, Bad Brains, and a young Dave Grohl with Scream, and you know, it's just this mind-boggling thing. And not only was it all about the music and all about the culture, but it was all about vinyl. Being a record collector is that same way. It's a lifestyle.
If you have something insanely rare.
Do you want this?
That's pretty rare.
First Nirvana 7-inch. Put my daughter through college with this one. Numbered out of 1,000 copies, one of my 893 or something like that. Wish I had number 1, but what are you gonna do?
So this is Shocking Blue cover.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Which Bananarama cover?
Yeah. So this is a cover.
Yeah, so yeah, originally done by Shocking Blue.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. This was back when they couldn't even, Sub Pop couldn't even afford to do the regular vinyl.
Yeah.
They just put in a sheet of paper and fold it. I had never taken it out of this ever. I didn't realize that it was literally like that. Vinyl is a connection. You become friends with people you probably would have nothing in common with, you know? That's the deepness of vinyl culture.
When you're a record collector, you kind of have a friend in every town. I have friends that will say, hey, I was digging and I found this amazing country record. I'm not a country collector, but do you want it? And they'll kick it my way.
Not only am I saying, I think you might dig this, but I'm also saying, this is who I am as well. And so if you connect with the music on this, then we're gonna be friends.
I'm just a working class guy who's into music and into records and wants to share.
The connection, you know, of music, it's like this thing that just sucks people together, and like the love of it, the enthusiasm, the passion.
Music grows within us and changes us and makes us feel a part of the whole. And, you know, that's the magic of all these records that we have.
The record that changed my life was Purple Rain by Prince.
Second grade, Mrs. Schmelz's class. It was a soul record by Honeycomb.
First was James Brown, and I have to say probably like the Hell album, a song called Papa Don't Take No Mess.
I had a Fisher-Price record player that was like a clamshell and has Cinderella picture disc. That was absolutely beautiful.
The first record I bought was Ben by Michael Jackson on a beautiful Motown 45.
Dakota, just left Montana. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked. We got Bismarck and Fargo ahead.
You've probably heard this song before, but try to understand.
I didn't intend on doing service work, but I realized that I needed to fix the turntables up and sell them, because if people don't have a turntable, then I can't sell them records. I came to Fargo. I liked Fargo a lot. There wasn't a place in town where someone could go dig and dig and dig for records in sort of an organized way. And that's what I wanted out of a record store. And it's just grown and grown and grown.
Check it out. I found a vegan record. Like me. I already have it. Classic Stones. Cool thing about this record is, I don't know if you could see Lucy there, like Lucille Ball. When they put this record out, she saw it and she got very upset. So Rolling Stones had to recall the records and take her face out. So if you can find one with Lucille Ball, you have like a first press. My favorite record of all time, Dark Side of the Moon. Not only is it like my favorite record, but I mean, look at it. It's just like, that image is probably one of the most like visually striking images I've ever seen. And they didn't even have to put Pink Floyd or Dark Side of the Moon or anything on it, just that.
You know, your music is really personal, so we try to make everybody feel super comfortable, and hopefully they'll find records here they like.
Everybody's getting a new hairdo, so I thought, well, I should get one too. I went in and I was feeling pretty cool, till I learned what they wanted to do. Oh, no, 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 no.
about the road. Another challenge other than finding records is finding good coffee. Like this nitro cold brew that I got is not like the nitro cold brew I would get back at home. So it's kind of nice to have like a change of pace, different style. Of course, being vegan makes everything hard on the road. There's a lot of cities that still haven't caught up with having options of veganism and supporting veganism, so it makes it hard, but that's how you know someone's a vegan. They won't shut up about being vegan. We were gonna leave and head to Minneapolis, but then my friend, he messaged me on Instagram and said, make sure I stop by the store, check it out. We did, and now I'm stuck here because they're having a 50% off sale, so that allows me to stack it up pretty high. This place we're at, Fat Cats, is it's not just a record store, it's actually an antique store, so they carry all kinds of stuff. We're just in the record section right now, but there's all kinds of stuff everywhere, and maybe sometimes places like this get looked over because it's an antique store. This guy's my friend. His name's Michael. He's a LA band, 3 O'Clock. Interesting story about their name. 3 O'Clock was always the time they met to practice, so that's how they got the name, the 3 O'Clock. I'm looking for this record, but I'm looking for it on red vinyl. What's it gonna be? Damn, black. I'll buy it anyways.
45.
Yeah, I'll do it. Cool. Bought a lot of records, and now I have to kind of situate them for the car. This was a cool find, Cake. Not the Cake from the 90s, but 60s girl group. Load up the car. All right.
Especially now, like, people are into a lot of different genres, and it's kind of almost unusual if you don't combine different feelings and moods from different genres.
You know, when I was 13, I was listening to like stuff like Anthrax and Metallica, a lot of metal kind of stuff, which, you know, led me back to like a group like Led Zeppelin, which then led me back to the Yardbirds because of, you know, Jimmy Page. And then, you know, now I'm listening to the Yardbirds and trying to figure out what they were into, and then it's like, okay, now I'm back listening to, you know, blues and soul and R&B, which is, you know, back to my parents' music. But in a way, it was like I found my own way to it.
Before computers and social media, music was radically changing every 5 years. You went from Pat Boone to the Beatles to Woodstock to disco to punk to heavy metal to grunge and techno, and that's been kind of cast in stone for the past 20 years.
No collection is complete without this guy. You have a Billy Joel record in here. Yeah, so it just goes to show.
Right, everyone's got at least one. But the reason why I have this Billy Joel record is because I think it was sampled by Marley Marl for a Cool G rap song, and that's the reason why yeah, Stiletto, right? Billy Joel, before he became Billy Joel, when he was still William Joel, was in a group called the Hassles. Yep. And at least one of the songs on here was also released on 45, which I have. But interestingly, when I tracked down the 45, I realized it's a completely different arrangement, but both of them are pretty good. When I got it, I sort of opened up the gatefold, and sure enough, there is.
Yep, there he is.
He was billed as William Joel. I think he was a teenager.
I am a humongous Billy Joel fan. That's why I always say every record collection's got at least one Billy Joel.
I was a DJ before I was a collector, and I started DJing back around 1992 or 93. And so records at that point were you purchased them for necessity's sake because you needed stuff to DJ with. It took a few years for me to really realize, oh, I'm actually chasing after stuff, not for the sake of the utility of the record, but for the possession of the record. And I think it's whatever that moment was, is when I realized, oh, okay, I'm a record collector now. Here we go. It's Sly, Slick, and Wicked. This was a group out of the San Gabriel Valley. They were part of the East Side sort of Chicano soul scene. And this was an album they recorded live. I mean, this is amazing right here.
I love when the echo comes in and everything.
Young girl, be true now. Be true. But boy, he really loves you.
A lot of people who got into record collecting who were into hip hop, you know, their interest in records of the past was, and myself included, was primarily because of sampling, first and foremost. And so you would hear this hip hop song by a De La Soul or a Tribe Called Quest or a Public Enemy, because so much of that music in the 1990s was built off of samples. You have this natural affinity for the sounds of the 60s and 70s because that was source material that ended up becoming part of hip hop records 20, 30 years later.
So this...
Right. That's Jay-Z.
But then here's Eminem.
Sometimes people don't realize until the next part kicks
Right.
in. Like here, I've shown this to a lot of people, and
Right.
they're like, no, I don't.
You need the guitar lick to come in.
And once that other part kicks in, they're like, oh yeah.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
First record I ever owned was Purple People Eater by Sheb Woolley.
Gil Scott-Heron, Pieces of Man. And I can remember especially that the revolution will not be televised.
In 1986, I was at summer camp, and my counselor played Master of Puppets for everybody. That moment changed my life.
That moment when the sun's about to break. When I used to think no one should be awake.
Almost every day, I get people talking about how much they love my hair, but if they only knew all the things I have to do to make my hair look the way it looks. So if I didn't put this stuff in it every day after I get out of the shower, it would just be like a gigantic frizz mess, and it would get all like dreaded up. And I get that a lot too, like, are you growing your hair out to do dreads? And I mean, dreads are cool. I don't think they'd look that cool on me, but yeah. But as you can see, I gotta make sure I evenly distribute. And this is daily life for me. And I can't just get up and go like some people. I definitely believe the universe guides me and gets me where I need to be. I don't like schedules. I try to not make appointments. I'm just here, I'm just doing my thing, and I'll let it happen.
Do you curse a lot?
Actually, I've cursed a little bit in front of you guys, but it's not actually like me. I think it's just because you guys curse a little bit. Sweet. Guru, 70s krautrock prog band from Germany, on like the label Brain. Pretty stoked on finding that.
Roadrunner Records in South Minneapolis. Just a little neighborhood shop, you know. Been here since 1985. Just coincidentally, a month before the economy went completely down the toilet, we cut the store back in half to its original size. It was just dumb luck. A month later, everything went down the can, and about a dozen stores in town went out of business, and we kind of wrote it out, and things are good now.
I'm gonna buy this record.
This 45?
Yeah.
You can have it.
Oh, wow, thank you.
I'll show
I'm
you
gonna.
why in a minute.
Uh-oh, is it cracked?
But it plays great.
That's good, that works for me.
You see on the label there? And then we got right there. But it doesn't extend through to the good side.
That's cool. Were you in any bands?
Obviously, the Fun Seekers, the Spectres, the Conquerors, and band. Yeah, I've been in bands since the early 80s.
Well, I'll see you later. Thank you so much. Have a good one. This is a pretty rare, like, kind of like funk thing.
What is that?
12-inch single.
Slug guy and unemployed. 82
soul record. This one you guys might be into. This is super rare funk record. Like, it's sick. I almost wanted to keep it.
Sometimes, you know, when I'm picking up some records, I'd rather just have it all on my phone or something. But, you know, when they're sitting there in my basement and I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh, that's tight. I'm glad I still do this.
I don't know any of this stuff.
No, I know. That's what's fun about records. It's like you think you know it all, but
and it just doesn't stop.
A lot of music lovers, if they've been doing this since they were kids, they probably wanted to be a DJ at some point. They probably wanted to be the guy that prescribes the music.
I only have like 3 of these. You know, that's crazy.
To this day, I still only have about half as many records as Anthony has. But now, I got to figure out how to kind of whittle it down a little bit because it's also kind of a burden to dedicate so much space.
Yeah. Yes, check it out. It has like
a big mouth.
Side A and B, like a tape, and so you can actually hit like a both sides button, and then it has 2 needles that like run on each side. So right now, if I switch sides.
You got a big mouth.
Yeah, that's the B side.
A big mouth. A big mouth.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But anyway,
that's all. It's crazy, you know what I mean? Like, I want them all, and there's no reason. I have no idea what they sound like.
We're at the record spot in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I actually didn't even know this store was here. I was just driving down the street and saw, you know, records on the sidewalk.
So is this taping right now? I was just selling records on the street in front of my house, right? Because I'd walk out the front door of my place and I thought that the boulevard would be like a place to make some money, you know? So I sold them on the sidewalk. I had like probably 400 records on the sidewalk. And like, so this one guy goes, hey, Foley, there's a storefront for rent. I came over and it was full of trash. And they used to build those cat things you stand on, you know, cats crawl up. But I had to have the surgery to have my eye taken out. So the day that I went to get my eyeball taken out, that's when my rent started. This town is ruled, in my opinion, by guitars and amplifiers. Rock scene is, there's a lot of bands, lots and lots of bands.
Yeah, they look cool.
Yeah, they're
like
all,
kind of
and
new.
I looked these guys up and they're all from like these weird bands and stuff. It's like they've been at it for a while.
Yeah, it looked interesting.
It's actually kind of a cool, and Dorma knew I like those guys.
Even if I'm not buying records in the future, I'll never stop traveling, you know? So I'll always be back to Minneapolis. That's how I am with every city. Like, I'm leaving you, but I'll be back. Curating Coachella, I really try to think about what people want, what people like, what people have asked me for. It's all about what they want.
The physical act of putting a record on, looking at the record, opening it up, reading the liner notes.
Holding a piece of music that they made and not like just on your phone where you can just look it up and be like, oh, I like this song. You actually have the whole album in your hand. Instead of downloading it, you already have it.
You have the symmetry of the jacket as a square and then the record as a circle. And the circleness, if that's even a term, is something about the record that I think is really intrinsic to kind of its visual appeal.
45s in particular just sound better than anything I've heard in my life.
Each record represents some incredible process that someone went through to try to get their music out to the world, and that in itself represents a fascinating story. Every single LP carries that kind of cultural weight to it.
I like records because they're crackly and they have
personality. But to some people, I think they can't tell a difference.
I don't think it's really an answerable question. Like, personally, I do feel like I like the way that vinyl sounds better, but, you know, people will still continue to argue about it, though. I can guarantee that.
So this is a good one. Everybody knows this song. I'm gonna crank it a little more. Whenever I'm in Philadelphia, listen to this song, visit the Rocky statue, you know? I kind of think of myself as like a Rocky on these trips, you know? Like a guy just on a mission, you know? Doesn't really care if he succeeds. He just wants to do what he loves to do, and, you know? Rocky just wants to fight. He doesn't really care if he wins or loses. Me, I just want to get records.
My parents did hang on to records a lot longer than I think others of my generation. You know, I was born in 1985 and everyone was just switching over to CDs, but we still had them kicking around the house, and I got super obsessed with the Beatles and just, you know, wore those records out. And as soon as I had, you know, a job and was making a little money, I would just be at the Princeton Record Exchange every chance I got. So this is by a guy named Wiley Barkdale, and it's on a label called Hickory out of Nashville, and he has just the best voice in the whole world.
Now, listen to me, baby, let me set you straight. I want your love, but I ain't gonna wait. I ain't gonna waste my time. I ain't gonna waste my time.
So you're all about the honky tonk.
Generally, I get the most in Detroit, places like that, because Detroit was a place where, you know, all these guys came up to work in the auto factories from all over, including like hillbillies. You know, there were all these hillbilly bars, there were country labels, subsidiaries of soul labels, like Mutt had a country subsidiary.
Never thought of Detroit.
For me, I'm more of somebody who really just wants to learn. I love this music and it just brings joy to me.
There's all types of people in record collecting. You've got eccentric people, you've got people that are very into arts, you know, you've got people that are very, like, kind of not into anything except for records. That's all they care about is records. And you've got people that are very much into social life, and then you have collectors that don't have much of a social life because they spend most of their time staying at home listening to records.
Principally to me, I've witnessed two different kinds of record collectors. There's the ones that came from baseball cards and the ones that came from like comic books or rare toys or something. The baseball card guys are usually more aggressive and sort of like weird, like they'll nudge you at the show, and then like the other people are like, no, did you check this one out? No, you gotta hear it. You know, the comic book folks are usually more ingratiating and like more about a preservation to it.
Yeah, some people are super picky about condition and they want like a hot matrix press, and some people just want to listen to the music.
Record collecting can be the whole gamut. It's not necessarily that someone's excited about some limited 10-inch. Sometimes it's just being part of the process.
I just bought this sealed record. You know, should I open it? I'm like, why would you even ask that question? Yes, you should open it.
My husband opened the store in 1988. We run it together now. And his line is that he was once the addict and now he's the dealer.
This record store always has a lot of things I've never seen. So like, I've never seen this record. Don't know what it's like, so I want it because I've just never seen it in all my digging. Same thing with this Ducks record. It actually looks pretty terrible, but I've never seen it, so I'm excited to experiment, listen to it, check it out. Hey, look, this guy right here, we met him at Roadrunner Records. So this came out Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1986. Younger version of the guy that was at Roadrunner Records working there. So that's kind of neat. Can't escape him. There he is. Maybe I'll buy it for that reason.
We think of the store as our collection because we can bring anything home we want on any given day. So a lot of times it's, let's pop the trunk what we bought today and let's listen to some of these most recent acquisitions before they find their forever homes with someone else.
I remember buying Paul Simon's Greatest Hits album, and the instant I put on, I was hooked.
Hey Seth, I'll just put it right here. Yeah, go.
As the store opened, I got to experience my interactions with my customers and just how generational, how timeless music can be. And a lot of my customers are a younger generation. But yet, if they're in here shopping with their parents are like, oh my gosh, you like that album? And you find this generational bond of this music that brings these people together, and it's just, it's magical. Music is just magical.
The first record that I owned was the Ghostbusters theme song by Ray Parker Jr. as a 45 record.
Hate to admit this, but it was my brother's record, and it was Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny Yellow Polka Dot Bikini.
The first record I fell in love with was Brick by a group called Brick. I told my mother I wanted that record, and she bought it for me.
The first White Stripes album, I forget what it's called.
First time that I really emotionally connected with an album, and it has remained my favorite album of all time, is the Beatles' Revolver. My mom would come in and she was like, "Why are you listening to this drug music?" And I'm like, "It's your record."
I think I'm like a bad representation to tell people in small town America, like, oh yeah, I'm from Los Angeles, because like a lot of times they think Los Angeles is a bunch of hippies and weirdos, and then when I roll through and I'm from Los Angeles, they're like, yep, see, told you, bunch of hippie long hair weirdos in LA. I love coming to Detroit. Tons of great soul, jazz, funk, disco type of records. And, you know, things that aren't funk, soul, and disco. This Kraftwerk record's pretty sweet because it has this hype sticker, which is actually, I've never seen this hype sticker, but what's even funnier about it is it's flipped upside down. So to me, I like that even more. Yeah, we're gonna just be in Detroit all day and then keep heading east. And right now we're in Hello Records, and I always stop here when I can.
This plant came to be as one of Jack White's homecomings to Detroit. He wanted to come back to his hometown and bring another retail location of Third Man Records, but also be able to reissue old Detroit music and give Detroit artists an opportunity to get their stuff pressed onto wax. Vinyl has a much higher sound quality capacity than CD. If you record to a vinyl master, that's literally the stream of my instrument coming out and getting cut into that. Here we are in a building that used to manufacture World War I Jeep parts. We've brought manufacturing back into it. We're reissuing older Detroit music. We're giving new Detroit artists an opportunity to get something pressed. That's a pretty cool full circle thing, especially from Jack, who grew up here and has come back to Detroit to honor all of that culture and heritage through the music. That's a pretty wonderful thing.
It's been sort of a Wild West thing where everybody kind of walked away from it, and the audience came back and was like, hey, I want records again. And so now everybody's like, oh shit, let's figure out how to make this happen. That's when we came to the idea of opening a pressing plant. We found out that there was a new company in Canada called Viral Technologies that was making brand new presses. And that was really exciting to us because previously all you could get were older presses that you needed to have multiples so that you could break them down for parts, and you had to have mechanical engineers on staff all the time to keep everything running. And so the idea that we could get in and come at it from a more modern, technologically advanced perspective was really exciting for us. Somebody will come in as a delivery person and they're just like, oh, you guys are crazy. And then by the time they leave, they're just like, this is so awesome. This is the greatest thing. I'm gonna go home and dig out my records. I'm so excited to listen to vinyl again.
Rainbow was established in 1939 by Jack Brown. He started making cardboard recording discs. They looked like a little record, but they were smooth, and they had a surface on it that home players could actually cut a groove into. They were already existing, but he started making them in color. That's where the name Rainbow came from. You want to make a record, you go into a studio and you get your recording, and then you supply that to us, and we cut a lacquer, and we metallize that lacquer. So we spray it with silver, which makes the lacquer conductive to electricity because the next steps are electroplating processes. You can buy a new machine today, which you couldn't buy a couple of years ago. That's only half the battle. Learning to make a record is the other big part of the battle.
There's an art to making a record. I mean, they are mechanical beasts, if you will. The fact is that how a record is recorded has a lot to do about how it's going to sound and how it's cut and how it's plated and how it's pressed. The majority of the people who work here are musicians or have an appreciation for vinyl or both. So they come to it with a passion for the product to begin with. So that's not something you can teach, really. You either have that or you don't. I think putting that together with what I hope to be is a good working culture, you know, has created what I think is a really good team. I think it's been good for us and for other plants as well, and as evident by the fact that there are newer plants opening up, so.
I'm not an audiophile. I'm a 45 collector. European pressing's not interested. Japanese, Australian. Somehow I feel nothing for them. I want a US and a UK pressing. Promo copy and a stock copy of everything. Every record. UK, promo, stock. US, promo, stock. Next single, Wild Tiger Woman, UK, promo, stock. I mean, it's been a very, very healthy thing. But it was all through loving collecting records and being obsessed with hearing everything and getting everything and finding a way to get it. Okay, so here's some of the Pink Floyd stuff.
Wow, that's cool with the picture sleeve.
Yeah. That's the American single of Arnold Lane. That's a promo, too. See, it's got to have the white label.
Wow,
yeah.
That's amazing.
Then here's the acetate.
Wow.
That's it.
Pink Floyd acetate. Is it okay if I touch it?
Yeah, you can touch it. You can smell it.
You're kind of blowing my mind with this stuff.
It's not big enough. It never can be big enough. As much attention as I paid to music and records my whole life, there's still stuff I'm finding out about constantly. So when I say it's never big enough, it's not like a greedy thing. It's just I'm insatiable. I love records.
Attic Records in Pittsburgh, and as you can see, they have like a bazillion records, and you definitely have to get a good night's sleep before you come here because it's almost like a workout. The way these records are in shelves like this and having to look at them this way, it's a lot harder to do this than it is to do this because you're elevated and you're holding up your arms rather than just kind of how they naturally rest. So every time I come here, it's a bit of a workout, but I always find great records, so.
Alex came here about 4 years ago now. Whenever he came in, he just started finding a bunch of stuff, and we became friends over the years. Alex has seen collections and stuff that we haven't offered to the general public.
I feel like Indiana Jones, you know, digging stuff up.
He's a good guy, so, you know, we help him out and we take care of him.
This store has always been very kind to me and let me go through stuff. And the owner, he's like super into the idea of these records going to Coachella and going home and going into homes and on people's turntables. And so he's really happy to help support what we do at Coachella.
I like music, but I didn't understand the importance of what it means to people to have a place that they can go and get away from all their problems in life and just look at records for hours and play records and enjoy it. And it sort of shuts out all the other negativity that's in their lives at the time.
What you said about when people come to get away and relax.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yep.
When my brother died, I would come over and spend hours.
Yep.
How many records do you think you have here?
No idea. Every store sort of has a unique thing. Our store is volume. Whether it's a 10-year-old coming in or an 80-year-old person coming in looking for music that they grew up with, everybody looks for different stuff. That's why we have to have the amount of stuff that we have.
All the way at the ceiling, like my head is at the ceiling. People are like, your job is so cool. I wish I could do what you do. And I'm just like, whenever they say that, I always think of times like this. But I get getting a stack of records out of it, so, it's worth it. I came across this one. It's called Papa John Creech. And whenever I see this record, in my head, I start going, Papa John Creech. Yeah, like just singing Madonna. That's how I entertain myself while working. Papa John Creech.
What you see here is all rebuilt after 2004. It was Hurricane Ivan, and it's just too much rain, and it wasn't the river, it was a creek that runs actually right underneath where we're at, but it snakes throughout the whole town, and when the creek burst, it was just a river running down the street. The whole town was underwater. I was here while it was happening, since it was an inch high to 4 foot high. It took probably about a half hour. And it's just a panic thing. You think you're trying to save things, but you don't even know what to try to save. And there was no time. There was no warning that it was gonna happen. I stayed until the very last minute, whenever like electrical currents started going through the water. That's when I decided I had to leave, which we went to the upstairs apartment. Anything the water touched was wiped out. So we spent about a month just throwing records away, which was in the millions. But we love what we do, so that's why we ended up being back where we are. On any day, we could have people from Russia, Poland, Cleveland.
Ooh, pretty red vinyl. Interesting thing about color vinyl, as much as people like it, it actually has worse sound quality, especially like clear and white, because you have to actually put all these different chemicals and dye into it, and it actually affects the sound of the record. So another time I talked about this record and how Lucille Ball's face was in it, and her face was right there. And when this record came out, she saw it and got, upset about it. So she told Rolling Stones they had to remove her. So that's what it looks like without her. Maybe I'll eventually find one where I could kind of match them up, show you the difference. But her face used to be right there. Now it's just a big yellow dot.
You don't get into the record business because you're looking to make money, which a lot of people find out. If you spend $1,000 on a collection, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm gonna make this money back in a week. It may take 30 years. Collecting records, some people say it's an addiction, some people say it's a disease, but once it's in your blood, you think of it a little differently. There's really never a time where it's like, okay, we have enough records.
You look at the cover art and you think, you remember this? This was sold. Yeah. What were you doing in '72 when that album came out?
I like the album covers for some reason.
I love the art on 45 labels.
This record is notoriously hard to find. This guy, Ike White, I mean, you're already familiar with his story.
No, I don't really know his story.
Well, he was incarcerated, and he did this record while he was in jail.
Oh.
And so all the musicians were people that were in jail. From what I do know of the story, it's like he wasn't really a bad prisoner. He just had like a think it was a drug thing that he was in there for, if I'm not mistaken. And he just wanted to make music, and that's what, you know, made him happy. So.
Yeah.
One of the most popular songs on this one is Love and Affection. It's been sampled quite a few times. It's right there.
Right. It's just break all throughout. Like, sometimes the break's only like 2 seconds.
It's always a magical part, like that people are able to snatch a little bit out of a song. As far as like music that's been sampled, what it means to me as a consumer is like it's bringing new life into a record that people may have forgotten about. If somebody's never heard of Bob James and they hear the break from Take Me to the Mardi Gras, they're not knowing Bob James or his history or all the records he put out or all the people he's played with or all the stuff he's done. They're just hearing that break and they're hearing it in a part of their favorite song. It's a wormhole that you can never really get out of. Groups like Kool and the Gang and the Meters and people like that, there's a certain sound that they put out there that's easy to sample because it's just there for the taking. But there's also so many other records out there that sound just like that that people haven't even discovered yet. I won't give up all my secrets, but for me, the more people that are in the group, the more meat is going to be in the record. And also, just a certain way that they're dressed and a certain way that they look. If there's one or more Jerry curls on the cover, pretty sure it's going to be some heat.
So we're in Beacon, New York, Hudson Valley Vinyl. Definitely one of my favorite stores in the US. I always buy a ton of stuff here. Beacon's a really cool town. There's lots of cool food around and some of the best records I come across. Pretty stoked. My friend actually told me to find this one for him. Oh, sweet. Suburbia. This is like the most punk rock movie ever made. Watch this movie.
I feel like there's records out there that just look really simple and really bad. There's whole runs of records that use generic sunset photos that are like insane funk and soul records that just like have the most killer stuff on it. Generic covers are the best thing, you know? A perfect example, I just bought records off a guy that walked in. You want to see it? Yeah. This record right here, this is a generic cover. This is about stopping smoking, but there's a record called Out of the Box, the exact same cover, the same design, but it's a really rare and good like psych garage record. There's hundreds of records like this with this cover, but only one of them will help me quit smoking though, hopefully.
A friend of mine says, oh, I collect MP3s, and that idea just sounds preposterous to me. It's like, how do you collect MP3s? They don't exist. I grew up totally obsessed with metal, and whether it was hair metal or kind of, my favorite band was Megadeth. And I found that I really gravitated towards female vocals. And in metal, there was so little of it. I loved Warlock.
Show me some records that...
Well, I love indie metal, but I don't collect it. What I collect very seriously is 1960s, what I call girl pop from all over the world. So soul, R&B, rockabilly, surf, garage. Refiling, it's always a joy. The clerk tries to tell you, you know, how it is and what to buy and what to do. Don't listen to him. You go with what's right for you, because it can be intimidating. I feel like that's a big issue with women, is that we get very uncomfortable when we don't know something. Go in there, don't know a thing, and embrace it and find the stuff you like, as opposed to a guy telling you what he knows, and mansplaining, as they say, which is very common in the record collecting world. Record collecting is taking me all over the world. My love of Japanese 60s pop records took me to Tokyo. I moved there. I got an internship at Warner Music. I was the only non-Japanese person in the entire company. So all of a sudden, like, I'm this 23-year-old girl in Tokyo running around the city digging up stacks of great 60s Japanese pop records. So I amassed a huge record collection, and because of that, got to release 2 compilations called Nippon Girls. So I got to spread the word on this music and bring it back to the West. The great thing about the Japanese and the French, which I collect a lot of French stuff too, is they all have beautiful picture sleeves, where the American and British, which I probably collect the most of, you know, you just get company sleeves, so it's not as exciting. but obviously the records are very exciting.
It was one of the first record store days. There were hundreds of people in line, and the fellow 10th in line, he waited in line all those hours, went downstairs, looked at all the exclusive releases, and then he came back upstairs with a $1 Heart record.
Record Store Day started in 2008. At the time, the press and sort of seeping into the popular culture was the notion that record stores were done. They still existed. To get the word out, let's just have a day, call it Record Store Day, and see what happens.
It's to remind people that independent record stores have a really vibrant place in the community. That's the mission.
The very first year, Metallica said,
"We're here to celebrate Record Store Day, huh?"
That was Metallica our first year. That's pretty good. And then Paul McCartney was like, we've had ambassadors from all over the place. We've had Chuck D.
Record Store Day. Last year I was the ambassador. I passed the baton over to my man Dave Grohl.
Record Store Day, that's been a great conduit as far as repressing stuff that's never been on vinyl before, or bringing stuff back around.
I make sure I celebrate the fact that the independent record store is still with us.
Everything is music. As soon as I saw this fence, all I thought about was that old country song, "Don't Fence Me In," you know? Thinking of "Don't Fence Me In" reminds me of times hanging out with my mom on road trips. She used to play that song a lot. We'd sing along together. I tried to act like I didn't like it because I was trying to be cool because I liked heavy metal and punk rock. But I secretly liked the song. I really love abandoned stuff because, you know, when you see a building that's in operation, people working in it, you know, running, you can't really create a story. You're watching the story. When you're here, you can think anything you want. You can think about how people were up there. You could think about what was going on down here. Just nature. You know, we built upon nature and we failed here. And so nature's building back upon it, you know, taking it back over. Maybe if I had gloves, I could do it. Or I don't know if I'm strong enough. You'd think lifting records all day gives you a lot of upper body strength, but this seems pretty hard to climb. Yeah, that's extremely hard. I could start to think again. I remember my sister always saying, Black Sabbath's like one of the coolest bands, and I just thought they were not that cool. Now, of course, like, I love Black Sabbath, but, and now, of course, I love Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and all the bands my sister listens to, and she loves to rub it in my face about how I used to talk crap about her music, and now I listen to her music.
Beat, rock, and drop the beat.
Producers used to snatch drum sounds and bass sounds from records. You know, sometimes you'll hear something that's totally alone and you know, sample it and then manipulate. We just get creative with how we want to make the drums sound totally different from where we sampled it from. Or you may hear some familiarity in it. Depending on how your ears are, you'll hear the samples go by. This right here, this album right here.
Ayo, Greg, nice. What time is it?
Fat Albert sample?
Yeah.
Early to rise, we gotta get paid. Early to bed, yo, we gotta get laid. I think it's time for us to make fresh runs out of our heads. Now on early morning, break of dawning at the hotel.
You know what's cool about sampling? Is sometimes when, like, you know the original before you hear the sample, and then
course.
when you're like, oh, what?
Yep.
They use that? That's cool.
They use that.
I think it's more fun to hear it that way than to like hear what they did and then find go look for the sample. You know?
Of course. There was all sorts of types of sampling going on even before actual machines were doing it. You know what I'm saying? In a sense, it was like we were sampling ideas with our minds, and then telling the band to play, hey, play this like the same way this goes. These guys heavily inspired my whole style of beat making.
I remember hearing them because they did that Anthrax.
Yeah.
And I liked Anthrax when I was a kid.
Yeah. My collection exists of every genre of music you could name or you could think of, from Bollywood to Thai to German to Italian to French to American. You name it, I got it. But there's a lot that I don't have. You know what I'm saying? With the way the vinyl world works, it's unlimited, it's non-stop.
Yeah, so you're still making music, you're still doing things, and you're not stopping.
No.
You're gonna do it till the end, right?
Yeah, man, it's something passionately I love doing. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, it shows when you're around this long, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Still wanting to do it, still wanting to loving the results of good beats.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that used to make music, and after 10, 15 years, they kind of just fell out of it. You know, started a family and left music behind and got a job, and and
for me, it drives my very soul. So.
Yeah, that's same with me. I can't ever see myself not collecting music. And one of my things is like you're someone who makes music, and then I'm someone who I feel like my purpose in the whole spectrum of music is to try to dig things up to provide them for people. You know,
of course.
In a sense,
people like me.
Yeah, so in a sense, I'm like, it's my job to get these and give them to the people so then they can enjoy music.
Of course.
You know, that's my way of making music.
And that's why we come to stores like this and spend hours and hours and hours until our pockets go like this. And that's it. You know, it's what we love to do.
We're in Red Scroll Records in Connecticut, one of my favorite stores. I always make sure I come here. One of the reasons is they always have great records. Also, they're friends. But one really super important part about Red Scroll is they ship all the records I bought from other stores all over the U.S. So I come here, dump all the records on them, and they ship them back to LA for me so I can fill the car up with more records.
Our store is modeled a little differently than
we're not
the idea of like Barnes & Noble bringing in records where they're banking on selling 20 copies or 30 copies of something specific, something released, some Taylor Swift or anything along those lines. But we're a little more tailored to the avant-garde. So
so we like to sell 20 copies of 20 different things, and then maybe sell them again.
Leonard Cohen, he's one of my favorite folk singers, rest in peace. He actually passed away on my last record road trip, I was in New Jersey when he passed away, and I remember checking into the hotel, kind of a little teary-eyed, and the lady asked if I was okay, and I was just like, nah, not really, A friend of mine passed away, because, he felt like a friend with his music. I loved his music, so even though I'm not his friend, he was my friend. awesome to be in your energy.
Oh,
you know?
thanks.
Because
In my obsessiveness?
yeah, I'm a big Patti Smith fan, so you being in Patti Smith's group, you know, is pretty cool. But sometimes I think, like, when I think of the name Lenny Kaye, the first thing I think of is Nuggets.
Oh, you mean this crazy, wacky record?
Yeah.
It's a nugget if you dug it.
Yeah, which you put out in '72, right?
Yeah.
Me, like, being the record nerd, I think he put out the Nuggets comp, you know, he compiled that. Nuggets had so much influence on my life, and knowing that there's more than what's on the surface.
It was really revelatory, and you know, I'm just glad I had a chance to wave the flag for these bands, wave the flag for this moment of time, and kind of have lots of beers bought for me around the world. I always loved records, listened to the radio, finding them, going to record stores. In the beginning of the 70s, I got to work in a record store. I worked at Village Oldies on Bleecker Street, 6 days a week, $10 a day, and got to live in the world that I had created for myself. I've been through just about every genre known. You know, I've had moments where I'm into country music, when the country music's up there. And of course, the great expanse of pop music, and I could reach in here and pull out, why, here's the MC5. The world is yours. Take it now and be one with it. Kick out the jams, motherfucker.
Put that mic in my hand. Let me kick out the jams. Yeah, kick out the jams. Gotta kick 'em.
MC5 was so much a part of the Detroit high-energy trans-love scene of the late 60s. It couldn't be more influential in my own universe. I've been collecting records now for, it must be over 60 years. And we need more records, because we don't have enough records. So many records, so little time.
Do the hammer lock. I do the hammer lock. You got a face like an innocent, but you knew just what I meant.
Since we're getting such an early start, we got longer till death do us part. You can be my child bride. You would. Now that is punk rock, and it's now yours.
Thanks.
And I have one less record in my house.
I have one more in my house.
There you go.
That's awesome. There's some records that are just iconic, like the cover, like that's just an iconic image of Patti Smith. Just no bra, hairy armpits, like, I don't know, just that image of her is so striking. Can never have enough copies of Fleetwood Mac Rumors.
Collectors become obsessed over these items, these recordings of people, you know, taping their experiences. And these are people that we most often will never meet, which makes it even stranger and magical in a way. That's what it's all about. You just keep digging and you just keep learning.
That's what I look like when I wake up in the morning. And it's also cool that they have like vegan cookies and food, so you can get coffee, snacks, and records. It's like my life. It's like coffee, snacks, and records. They just need vintage T-shirts, and then I could live here.
This is Microwave Boogie. It's from Jersey City.
Jersey City, yeah.
Skip Jackson and the Natural Experience.
Can we hear it?
Get a chance. Yeah, you want to hear it?
Yeah.
It's great.
I don't know that record.
Oh, it's really good. It's like real super lo-fi.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I remember Herbie Hancock Rocket, and that was it. Like, I was like, I want to be a DJ. For me, I like to think about the park jams in the city in the 70s when, you know, Flash and Herc and everybody started. There wasn't hip-hop back then, but they extended the drum break. I want to be able to leave a legacy to my kids to be like, oh, my dad was someone who was able to educate and share music and make people happy. You know, a DJ's purpose is whatever you have going on in the world, you're going to come see what I do, and you're going to forget about all that stuff in the outside world, and you're just going to have a good time. And that's, you know, I think we all can agree that that feels good.
Our physical store has been out for 37 years. I personally came along in 1989, but I really like the idea of an independent place, and I really loved the feel. It was very wild then. It was all guys. It was loud. It was noisy. It was not near as clean and pretty as we have it here now.
This Christopher Cross record is like super underrated. It's so amazing, and it's always in dollar bins, and I'm hoping one day it catches on, so I buy them all the time. Joe Cocker record has a song called Woman to Woman. Woman to Woman, and it's actually the sample, like Tupac, Dr. Dre used the intro of this song for their intro of California Love. That like California, and then the California Knows How to Party is also a sample. It's I don't recall the group, but it's like a 80s hip hop group out of LA.
I've always loved music. I've always loved customer service. I love retail. I like creating a microcosm where, I don't know, people can gather. The internet's great, I love it, but it's cold, it's sterile, and the idea of being able to create a place where people can come and congregate, who enjoy music, who love being together, learn things, play things, listen to things, it's an exciting time.
When I'm driving, to be honest with you, I zone out a lot. That car right there reminds me of that 70s show. You know, Eric Foreman had a car kind of like that. And I'd love to have a car like that one day and like cherry it out. Be a pretty good car to take records in. Being here in Washington, D.C., I don't think about like the president. You know what I think about when I'm in D.C.? I think about hardcore music. I think about punk rock. I think about straight edge. And I think about one band in particular, and that's Minor Threat. Like, and this song's called I Don't Want to Hear It. And that's kind of how I feel about politics. Like, I don't want to hear it.
Please say a command.
Cancel route.
Are you sure you want to cancel your route?
Yes. Just put that in there. We're in Celebrated Summer Records in Baltimore, Maryland. This store, I stop here as much as I can. It's great records. But what's really cool about this store is like it's kind of also a museum of old punk and hardcore. Things like set lists and flyers, old photos from the 80s. Here you have the Bags playing at the Mask, you know, on Hollywood Boulevard. And then right above it, you have Youth of Today playing in Pomona, which, you know, and it's right across, basically really close to where the Glass House is.
Baltimore is lucky that this town has a lot of very friendly and very kind of cool record stores. My concept for the store from day one was to be more welcoming, more open, non-judgmental. I was basically a teenage metalhead. I was like really into Motley Crue and Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and stuff like that. In the 1980s, everyone just bought cassettes. New Anthrax record, cassette. New Public Enemy record, cassette. And then probably around 1990, I was like, oh, I think I would rather have vinyl. I buy a lot of punk rock record collections from people.
So many great flyers, like, you know, Black Flag with Ray Pettibon art, you know, Descendants in Berkeley, so in San Francisco. A lot of these are from California. And there's like a bold promotional poster, all these things I would love to have.
Some of the things in the store, like set lists from Black Flag shows and things like that, I mean, they were in a tub underneath a bunch of children's toys, and no one was going to see them. I'll pay the money for them and be like, hey, you were cool enough to keep this stuff, and then it's just going to become part of the permanent exhibition of the store. I don't like to flip those things. Like, I don't want to make money off of them. I just want people to see them.
Punk was one of the very few genres of music that still kept putting out records on a regular basis. They never stopped putting out records, even pop music, you know, even someone like Sarah McLachlan or, you know, like Blind Melon or, you know, Pearl Jam, like everybody, Nirvana, they all put out records. It's just they weren't really in the mainstream. But punk music, that was the preferred format of music, was a record, because you'd order catalogs and it'd say like, you want the new Screeching Weasel album. It's $8 for a cassette, $10 for the CD, or $7 for the LP. So the LP was actually the cheapest thing. So a lot of people would buy the LP because it saved them a buck, you know?
The first record I remember listening to was Snoopy versus the Red Baron. I think it's by the Royal Guardsmen.
The first album I heard that I wanted, and I couldn't live without, was by Wes Montgomery, Bumpin'. So I built a shoe shine kit, and I would charge $0.25 to shine shoes to buy that record.
My first memory of playing a record was a '78 called Golden Wedding. I don't know who did the record. I would really like to find it.
I don't even know how I found this 45, and I'm pretty sure that I probably wasn't allowed to have it, but the first record I ever played on my own, Sir Mix-a-Lot's Square Dance Rap. I can still sing it for you today, like every single word.
I was 9, and it was Tom Petty, Damn the Torpedoes, and I still love them.
Always want to make sure I stop at steady sounds. It's always funny when records play off of other records. So this Fits of Depression record, I'm the Man, it was like doing a parody of Joe Jackson, I'm the Man. So it's always kind of funny, because at first you're like, Joe Jackson? No, wait, Fits of Depression. Whenever I come to Richmond, it never fails. I always find tons of 90s emo, screamo, hardcore stuff for like $1. A lot of that sound was really big in this part of the States, but in Southern California, you don't see a lot of this. So I always grab it because a lot of it reminds me of growing up, being a kid. Like this band, Spanic Corzo, love this band. I already have all of these records, but I'm hoping somebody out in California is looking for them. When I get to a record store, first thing I do is, you know, look at the wall, because I definitely want to pick up as many rare records as possible, and rare records tend to go on the wall. After the rare records, straight to new arrivals, because your locals have been through those bins, but they might not have been through the new arrivals. And then after that, just start going through each genre, A through Z. But as long as prices are right, condition's good, quality of record, titles are good, I just go through every single bin in the whole store.
This store's never made money. I just get more records. It's always that subsistence, just like being in a band. If you care, you keep doing it. I get to see father and son look at the same records. And if I'm lucky, they might even buy one instead of just talk about it.
So this is a record that's extremely important to me. All their records are very important to me. I've listened to them on the road many, many hours. Actually, I listened to them on this trip. I think when I was in like the Oregon coast, I was listening to Beachwood Sparks. So yeah, it's kind of cool to be in Athens, Georgia, and see a little bit of LA represented. Like part of me wanted to pick this up and take it back to LA, but then I kind of thought for a second, nah, I'm gonna leave this here. I want some kid to maybe pick it up because the cover's super cool and fall in love with it like I did. So I'm pretty stoked. I'm in New Orleans right now. Stopped off real quick on my way to Austin. I'm getting some food. We got a sweet potato po' boy, mustard greens, and then for dessert, peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Oh yeah, let's go. Wait, how are you moving? How are you moving?
Slow down.
Slow down?
Yeah.
Like that?
This way. Too much with your knees.
Too much with my
Your
knees.
hips. Lock your knees.
So every time I drive this route, you got the swamplands right next to you, and I'm always looking down there hoping I see an alligator. I have been known to hang out with alligators. I got pretty close, you know, within 10 feet from a bunch of alligators in the Everglades. Played records to them last trip. Nature feeds my soul for sure.
From here to you, you drift away. You drift away.
Obey traffic laws, be alert, and use voice commands while driving. Please proceed.
Every record store around the US is completely different. I can go to a record store 10 times and I'm never gonna find the same records. I never buy the same amount of records. I never spend the same amount of money. It's always different, and that's kind of part of the thrill and what keeps me going. You never know what you're gonna find. The Austin Record Show is the largest record show in the United States. It's been going on since, I don't know, over 30 years. And it used to be like the premier record show in America. Now it just kind of holds the title as the biggest record show.
That's pretty rare steel. You ain't got a Bob Seger back in 72, do you?
No. Mm-mm.
It's too cheesy.
You don't like it?
I'm trying to sell the whole collection because I came down with terminal cancer, and I didn't want to burden my boy or my mother or all those people with, 9 million records. So I figured, okay, it's time to like get rid of them, sell them, and then I can leave my kids, a lot of money rather than stuff that they can't use,
This record is probably my best find. It's a 60s kind of garagey girl group called the Gtos. But what's really cool is that the guy I got it from worked at Playboy in the early 70s, and Pamela DeBars did a shoot for Playboy. And so that's her right there. She signed the record to him. And if you don't know who Pamela DeBars is, she's pretty much the most famous groupie of all time. She hung out with almost every huge musician you've ever heard of. So that's my favorite score of the day. The record show was decent. Quantity, not totally there, but definitely quality today, for sure. So all the records I bought on the road are gonna go to people I know, strangers, Coachella customers. But to me, if you're buying a record, you're a friend. And it's heading home to LA. One of the cool things about getting home is looking at everything I got. I've been on the road for a month, I don't remember what I bought when I was in Oregon. I don't remember what I bought when I was in Connecticut. I don't even remember half of what I bought in Austin. I just know I bought a lot of records. Right now, we're about 10 miles outside of Coachella, so it's kind of funny how these records will pass Coachella, go home to LA, but then eventually we'll come back to Coachella and be out at the festival.
Future of vinyl. It's probably like asking somebody, what's the future of hardcover books?
What's the future of records?
I don't know.
That'd be great to know.
Yeah.
Records? What? You know, and it's like, okay, you know, fair enough, but like, when was the last time that you saw CDs in a store?
There's something to be said about culturally preserving or historically preserving while there's the proliferation of technology on the horizon.
I don't think there's a need for vinyl to exist, but I love that it does.
This is a love that I've held my whole entire life.
Everybody always says to me, isn't this just a fad? And, you know, my favorite one is those are coming back. Well, for me, they never went away. I've been haunting record stores, you know, for 20, 25 years.
There's no way in the world that I believe you can ever really get rid of it because it's unlimited material. It's like an unlimited thing.
Every collection's different. They vary in size, they vary in content, they vary in genres. But one thing we all have in common is our passion for music, which makes us collect. I might not know this person, but they're my friend because I have something in common with them. And that's the beauty of music. Music brings people together. It's because of music that we go out and try to find these pieces of plastic. People ask me, what's a record you'd like to share with people? And I have one record, although not my most valuable record. This is the most prized piece in my collection because there's only one. This was a lady who made this record in 1967. What she would do is go to offices and labels and say, here's my record. They'd put it on the turntable, they'd listen to it, and everybody turned her down. And she was really upset over this. She just said she'd never wanted to do music again. And so her manager at the time, she gave it to him, the guy I got this from. I've actually tried to track her down, and I can't find her. Her only contribution to music is this record, and there's only one of these in the whole world. I could never understand why anyone would turn this down. It's beautiful. It's like lovely and haunting at the same time. And for the time that she was putting this music out, it was really relevant, you know? It was what was happening. So what you're hearing is nobody else in the world has this record except for me. So I'm happy to share it with you. It means a lot.
used to crash parties in high school and take my records to the parties and hate the records that other people were playing and pull theirs off and slap mine on their turntable and then getting thrown out of their parties. I thought that was kind of fun. You know.
First 45 I ever played, I would have been about 2 years old, and that was I Want to Hold Your Hand by Z Beatles.
LL Cool J is going back to Cali, which has this enormous bass boom.
Record collecting's insane. Why would I want to fill my house with all this junk, you know?
There you have it.